Okay, great. So my name is Noam Strassfeld. I am the president of the Megagame Society. Our group is a bunch of designers, graphic artists, coders that are all dedicated to creating really interesting 20-plus person mega games. That's all we want to do. We love these games, and we want everyone to love them. So real quick, what a mega game is: 20 or more people, all in one place. So not right now, not electronically, playing a game together. A mega game is broken down into smaller mini games that all affect each other. So the UN, in case of Watch the Skies, the UN will do things that affect the military or economics or other. So all of the games are interconnected. And they're designed to be interesting and engaging, but also encourage role-playing and breaking the game, to do things outside of the game in a role-playing way. So, for example, in our first game, we had the aliens wanted to create their own pope, basically, to to spread the alien agenda. We made up a rule for that, and they created Space Pope, basically, to replace regular Pope. And I had the incredible, oh God, it was just great. I was able to go, because of that, I pulled all of the heads of state from all the countries together, and I said, okay, so the Pope is about to announce that aliens exist. Would you like to kill the Pope? You have 10 minutes to decide. I'll never forget that, because it was just like the look of horror, like, what? You know, we get killed? What? So it creates these kind of moments that are incredible. So that's what a mega game is. That's what we're trying to do. A very brief history of mega games. Jim Wallman is the head of the mega game makers. They've been making these games for about 30 years, and they're based out of London. They have another group, I believe, in the Netherlands, and possibly one other group, but that's it. So Jim has been making these games for this core group. His real job is he makes military simulations for the actual military, and that's about all I know, because it's classified information, and they would kill me if I asked more about it. So Jim has been making it for his core group, and his core group are all hardcore role players. So his games work very, very well if you are hardcore role players. We are taking the tact of making games ourselves, and in particular, Watch the Skies, but we're making our own games as well, to make them have it not just be for hardcore gamers, to be board gamers or people who don't really know very much about games. So, for example, in Jim's original Watch the Skies, the news game was simply you have to write a newspaper every 30 minutes, every turn. If you're a hardcore role player, that's probably great. That's enough for you. Like, oh, okay, great. Well, I'll be CNN, or I'll be Fox News, or I'll approach it this way, and then I'll be typing up these things, and it'll be great. And they can go and run with it, and that's fantastic. What we've noticed is people who are not hardcore game, hardcore role players get a little bit frustrated with that, or a little bit more upset about that. They kind of take the approach where they say, well, I don't, so I have to write this paper, but it doesn't affect the game at all. There's no rules. I don't know what my goals are. I don't know what's going on. And they don't have a good time with it. So what we do, just again, using that example, so for the News Corps, what we did is we created 3 different news companies. They're all competing to get the Pulitzer Prize. Any newspaper article they write has drastic effects on the economic game of all the human nations. So they're very, very much, the human nations are very much like, please use our press release, say nice things about us, don't say bad things, because we can't afford it. So they have a direct impact in the game, and they have their own special powers that they can each get information in somewhat interesting and nefarious ways. They can bribe people, so they have a much more constructed game, which in our experience, if you're not a hardcore role player, you want more of that. A hardcore role player doesn't want anything. They basically want the bare minimum, and they want a little bit of history, you know, of that role, so that they can create whatever they want. The other example I would give is, like, you know, if Mike Merles, who's been building and designing Dungeons and Dragons for 30 years, is playing Dungeons and Dragons with 4 or 5 of his friends who are also building and designing Dungeons and Dragons for 30 years, they really don't need a rule book or very much of anything, right? Like, they can just sit down and, you know, make a story up. They just need to know what world they're living in, and the rules really just get in the way for them. Ooh, sorry. But if you are not that particular group, if you are larger, you know, like if you need a little bit more than that, if you're, you know, new to D&D, that's not, people are going to be lost and they're not going to have a good time. So we're designing it for that particular, you know, the board gamers, the people who need a little bit more, like need a little bit more of a game. We've also done, especially for Watch the Skies, we've redesigned it because the game was made a very long time ago, and the design, you know, what we know of as good design has changed over the last, you know, 20, 30 years, right? So when you play Monopoly for the first time, like, you're like, oh my God, this is amazing! Like, I can play with other people, this is so great. And then you, when you get a little bit more lexicon of what's a good game and a bad game, you're like, oh, player elimination. Someone's going to sit there for an hour watching us play. That's not so great. Or, you know, player movement is determined by dice. That's not so much. That's not so good. So we've basically taken out every particular game. So when you are wanting to run your game, what I would suggest is, if, you know, what are you trying to look for? If you're trying to run this game for super hardcore role players, you probably might want to run Jim's game, because Jim's game is much lighter, and, you know, a lot of the games are very basic. Sometimes it can be a little confusing, but, you know, it's a different game. If you are looking for more broad-based appeal, you probably want to run our version. In that same vein, another example is, you know, in Jim's game there are about 24 technologies. Well, there's a varied amount of technologies, and only about 4 of them actually have a real in-game benefit. The rest of them just let you research the next thing down the road. That didn't fly for our players. People didn't like that. So we've created a whole new whole new science game where they're searching for artifacts and searching for rumors and also screwing each other over a lot, which is fun. You know, a whole new tech tree where every technology has a benefit, an espionage tree, which is really fun, which I can't really talk about because this is going on air, and you know, it's sort of a surprise for the game when you play it. So those are the kind of things that we change. We also, another thing to keep in mind if you're running Jim's game, again, Jim is a genius. I love him. We work with him on this game and other, you know, like all the changes we made, we work with him on. So he's completely on board, and I'm actually Skyping with him in 2 or 3 weeks to create one version of Watch the Skies. You know, if you want, anyway, sorry. So going back, if you want the hardcore role playing, you might want to run Jim's. If you want something has different mechanics, updated mechanics, that kind of thing, you might want to run ours. I'm not going to be offended either way. It's all what you guys want to do. So that's so Watch the Skies in particular, which is I have to assume that everyone is the most interested in, because it's the most accessible thematically. Everybody wants it. My mom wants to play this game. She does not play games. I love you, Mom. If you ever see this, please don't ever watch this. Oh God, I hope she never watches this. yeah, so how it works is that there are different mini games that all affect each other. There's the UN game, there's the military game, the science game. The military game feeds into the science game feeds back into the military. All of them feed back into economic. Some of them affect the UN. So you basically have different control people controlling those particular games. At the same time, those control people they're basically king of the castle for their game, and they're the game master / dungeon master for that particular game. So when a player comes and says, hey, I want to do X, I want to create a space pope, you ask them about it, you talk to them about it, and you then say, okay, come back later. You meet with the other control and you come up with a rule for it that hopefully doesn't break the game. If it breaks the game, that's okay, because you can break it back later. Yeah, so that's sort of how the different. So you'll have basically what you'll have is one person be the primary, and then everyone, if there's multiple people for each control group, there's the secondary for those control groups, and those they'll just it's sort of like a structure, right? So they report to the primaries all talk to each other and talk to game control, which is the overriding, it's my way or the highway kind of person. Usually nicer than that, hopefully nicer. So yeah, that's sort of how Watch the Skies work. Now, I'm trying to get through things quickly so that I can get to question and answers. The physical aspects of it. There are different layouts. You're going to need for a space. What we recommend is about, if you can, about 3,000 square feet or 300 square meters place. You need one large room and then 3 small rooms. The small rooms are about 15 feet by 15 feet, which I don't know what that is in meters. Sorry, like maybe 20 meters? I don't know. I'll have to figure it out in a little bit. Sorry. No, that can't be right. I don't know. I'll have to figure it out in a little bit and then come back to you on that. Oh, okay. 1.5 is okay. All right, that's good to know. Thank you. So then 3 smaller breakout rooms and then 1 large room. The more rectangular, the less space you need in terms of square footage or square meterage. So for especially for your first game, what we recommend is talking to universities first and foremost. There's usually in any university there's usually a gaming club of some kind, and they usually are very, very interested. And when it's a local students, creating, asking for space and stuff, it's a lot cheaper. It works. It's fine. So we definitely recommend going that route. Another route is churches, regular schools, primary schools instead of universities, or if you're in the New York Jewland, synagogues, because we got a lot of them here. Just those kind of places are generally, they have the space and it's generally cheaper. For that kind of thing, we've been able to get away with fairly cheap places. That will probably change as we need a home base soon. Let's see. In terms of physical components, there are a lot of physical components. To make things easier for control, we have a lot of physical components. So right now, we're trying to reduce. I'm working to reduce it now. For example, we have 3,000 cards that have to be printed. We're trying to get that down to 2,000. But there's also chits, a bunch of other stuff. With the, I would say the first time out, you're probably, if you're getting everything professionally printed, you're probably going to end up paying about $1,000 US for all the components. And that's including some extras just in case you lose pieces or something like that. Now, that is a high upfront cost, but the good news is that you can reuse the stuff. It's very, you can basically run it for as long as you want with replacing components every once in a while when they wear out. You could also do it yourself. doing the printing. As attractive as that is, I would suggest that you don't do it that way. It's better to have, we did it like that initially, but only because it wasn't a stable game. We are making revisions. We're in the 5th revision, and now it's stable. And now we're going to get it professionally printed. It's the amount of money you save is not worth it considering how much time it takes to cut everything out. We have a print-on-demand place in the U.S. We can talk to you about print-on-demands in Europe or other places, and we can try to, if you have a print-on-demand place that you like, we can try to, put everything in their format, in their template, if they can't use our template, and have you printed out there. But yeah, it's about $1,000. For our particular game, we have copyrighted it. We do have a licensing model where, and this is also flexible, we can do different things, where basically we recognize that running it the first time is very expensive. So what we say is run it the first time, for free, use our game, that's fine. For subsequent games, to help us pay our costs and to pay our graphic artists and coders and server space, and I'll get to that in a second, we'd ask for 10% of the ticket price for our group to help design, maintain, and manage these games. We can do an upfront thing as well if you'd like. The reason why we made it so that it's not upfront like that is because of the high cost of getting all the components printed. We wanted to make your guys' lives a little bit easier and not ask for an upfront cost. We are also, on that same note, we're developing an app which should be ready in about 6 months, I believe, which will make controls lives a lot easier. Everything will be, you put all the different various parts of the game into an app, and it spits out things. It makes things a little bit easier for you, and it also makes you able to do things like, if you want to, eventually you can create stories, and we're going to get to the point where hopefully you can publish the stuff out and people can watch live in real time some parts of the game, which it turns out that there's an audience for that. People want to watch it in real time, even if they're not playing. So that's how we're doing the licensing model. Again, if that doesn't work for your particular group, we can talk about it. We're not we're trying to just pay honestly, we're just trying to pay our artists. None of the executive team of the Mega Game Society take any money from that. We just go into paying what's going to be our server costs, our development costs, and to pay our artists. Sorry, there was something I did miss before. If you do use Jim's game, one thing that you might want to check on, he used a lot of art from the internet, and the last time I talked to him, he didn't ask for permission for that. So it's something you might want to think about if you use his game in terms of, there might be copyright issues. It's obviously very, very different depending on what country you're in. There's fair use. There's, that kind of stuff. But a lot of the photos and images and stuff like that that he used are not original art. So just something to keep in mind when you're running that. Anyways, sorry, going back. So physical cost is about $1,000 US. We recommend. Getting interest from both players and control to help control the game, help manage the game. It definitely takes some legwork initially, and if we can, we'll help out with that. But you're definitely going to want to put aside some time to advertise to local gaming groups. Local gaming groups, local universities, local friendly local game store. Is that what it is? Friendly? I don't know. Friendly neighborhood game store. And you will sell out. There just needs to be some legwork. That's for your first game. After that, as long as you're running it, competently or decently, you will instantly sell out all the time. You just it just becomes a huge problem because the first, getting everyone into the door, once they play the game, all of them want to play it again, and then they tell all of their friends. So now instead of a problem where, oh, I have 50 people, now it's 250, and then it just grows. So there's definitely a lot of initial legwork, a lot of initial setup work. After that, not so much, because everybody wants to play this, and it's a great game. We love it. Honestly, we do. So yeah, that's control. That's that. I think I went through most of what I needed to talk about to try to give you guys some information. So I'm happy to take question and answers now. And you can also tell me if I was completely useless. That's also allowed.
So here's a first question for you. How many people do you normally have running control?
It depends if you want to add the corporation faction. If you're adding the corporation faction, then you're probably going to want around 14 or 15 max, and then it's 64 players. Which is an all right ratio. We got to work on that a little bit. But yeah, you're gonna want at least, you're probably gonna want 15, let's say. Eventually, after you run the first game, you're gonna get to the point where you have too many people who want to control because they're just interested. And usually, when that happens, what we do is we just have even more control, and then we also say, okay, you can be control. You're the documentarian. Please take photographs or video or something like that. So yeah.
And without the corporations, how many would it be then?
It's 64 players total. Sorry, without the corporations. Oh, sorry. It's 52 players, right? 64. Yes, 52 players.
Okay.
Yeah.
And considering maybe the need to run a first game in order for the control or for the masters to get trained in running such a game, is there a good number to start with our first mega game rather than starting immediately with 60 people and then risking to make a mess?
So you're gonna want to give yourself some time to go over the games with your control group, right? So you're gonna want to go through it like 2 or 3 times, make sure they really know their game well. And sorry, Manfred, Freddie, I'm sure I'm not pronouncing your name correctly, and I apologize. Hopefully you will not hate me. And I will get to your questions as soon as I'm done with Andrea. Yeah, so I would, if you run it 3 times as your with your control, it's fine. You can't really run a smaller game. I mean, you can run it like, yeah. Our recommendation is that you make sure that you have, let's say, a month where you're just meeting with your control group about 3 or 4 times, and one of them should be specifically right in front of the game to just go over the different games. Generally, what you want to do is train your primary control, so like primary military. Say this is how military works. You put the interceptors down, then they move this to it. All that stuff. And then have them train the secondaries, and then make sure they all know what they're doing. So yeah, so that's how you should run it. There's no real way otherwise to run like a trial game for the most part. Did that answer your question? Okay, cool. Okay, so I'm just going to mangle your name, Manfredi. I apologize. I'm sure that I'm getting it all wrong, and you seem like a nice guy, and I apologize. The one designing and testing mega games. We have 4 games in active development that we're working on. Watch the Stars, which is going to be a sequel to Watch the Skies. The King Hereafter, which is a Macbeth megagame, a Shakespearean Macbeth megagame, or Megabeth as people like to call it, and I hate them for that. It's not Megabeth, it's Macbeth. God damn it. Puns! All right. A Jane Austen game. Jane Austen, Jane Eyre. I'm forgetting. I'm blanking on the incredibly prolific and amazing author from a long time ago. That's just embarrassing. Okay, we're just going to keep moving on. And a Lovecraftian game. We absolutely, if you're interested in as a game designer, yeah, Jane Austen. Sorry, I can't. My brain is gone. Jane Austen is the author. So if you're interested, the question was he's interested in designing and testing. We're happy to help with that. Or sorry, we're happy to connect you. Sorry, with the head game designers. We have head game designers and then designers who are working on the various different parts. Happy to connect you with that. That's perfectly fine. The second game is their less costly mega games. Running Jim's game will cost you a little bit less because he has less components. What I would say is that you can put up an Eventbrite page. Eventbrite is, I don't know if you use it in Italy, but in the U.S. it's just a page where you put up tickets. People can buy tickets by credit card, and then they just give you the money. You could put up a page earlier and collect the money and then use that money to pay for the game. That's certainly one option, so that you don't have to worry about taking that out of pocket. Okay, sorry. I thought there was a reaction to that. So that's one thing. The other thing that we are looking at doing is creating an app version of the game for people to use that is just an app version, so it gets rid of most of the physical components. Both I and all the other designers are it's not a great solution because it definitely brings people out of the game. There's a very important part. There's a good aspects of having it physical, and taking it into an electronic version, while makes control easier, makes things a little bit more complicated. So we're examining that. We're working on that, but it's not there yet. But yes, for the high cost of the game, what I would suggest is putting up the tickets, selling the tickets, and then 3 or 4 months in advance, you collect the no problem. You collect the money for it, and then you use that money to pay for the physical components up front.
So just because this question links into that, sorry to interrupt, Freddie, but what advice would you give on pricing your tickets?
Oh, sure. People tend to price their tickets too low to start. In terms of the U.S. dollars, pricing it less than $30 per ticket initially, I think is a mistake. I would go with more like 40 or 50. You have to realize you're giving them a 6 to 8 hour experience. Equivalent like in New York City, which is not a great equivalent because it's a very expensive city. A scavenger hunt for 2 hours is a company that does this. Some thematic elements, they charge $70. So I would say specifically you shouldn't charge less than $30, and you should probably go more like $40 or $50. Obviously equivalent in pounds or euros. Is Italy euro? Italy does euro, right? Okay. I'm a stupid American. Congratulations, I'm the worst. Okay, sorry. Americans are not very smart. So we would recommend that. You would be surprised at how quickly it scales up. That's the first game. Subsequent games, you're going to be charging a lot more. You're going to be charging $60 to $80. Yes. Going back to Manfredi, because he had a couple of different questions. The internet-based mega games. that is going to be a. He asked if they're internet-based games. That's pretty far out. You know, we're exploring that. We're definitely not there yet. And it's a very complicated prospect. So there's a reason why, you know, when you're talking about Dungeons and Dragons, that game there isn't really a Dungeons and Dragons, like you can't play a role-playing game really via video game, because the role-playing aspects, it's too hard to create a flexible enough system that's not insane to manage. So we're definitely looking at that, but that's very, very far out as to whether we do that. And we're also a little bit skeptical of it because it does remove a lot of it, even more if you take away the physical aspects. So that's something. So in terms of one of the questions was, you know, is there a market here? It's a good question. You know, I am not an expert in. I'm barely an expert in like a 5-block radius around my area, let alone the U.S., let alone other countries. Yeah. So there's definitely a there's, you know, I can't talk culturally as to whether, you know, what's you know, how much you can charge and that kind of thing, but you can look at different models and see what you know, there's definitely models and value out there. So if you go to a theater, if you do a theater ticket, that's passive, that's 2 hours, and you get charged a lot for that. I mean, at least in New York, I don't know in your country, but so there are definitely models out there. It definitely seems that people are willing to pay that amount and can pay that amount to do so. So yeah, I mean, if you're talking starving, you know, university students, yeah, they might not be able to drop down, you know, $60 or whatever, but that, you know, that might not be your market. And it probably isn't. Like, if people are dropping $60 on board games, you know, board games are expensive. All these games are expensive. So video games are $60 a pop. This is a different experience. I would be surprised if you couldn't charge people for this. There's definitely demand, and you know, you should be able to charge people for this. We could talk more offline about it if you want. I don't know.
Another question from my side is I purchased the Watch the Skies pack from the Megagame Maker site, I think from Jim.
Yes.
He wrote. Yeah, okay. So what you're talking about is that game, or you made modification while running it?
So yeah, so what we did is we took Jim's original version of Watch the Skies, and we worked with him on this, and we changed every game that was within it. It is still a game where there's, you know, a head of state, a deputy head of state, a scientist, that kind of stuff. It still has aliens, although the alien motivations have changed. It still has, you know, interceptors and saucers, but how all of the meat of the game has changed. All of it has changed. The scientists no longer just get those briefing, you know, those readout briefs. They get a lot of different things. All of the games have been changed. Part of them we changed because we felt it was absolutely necessary. So if you're looking at Jim Wallman's game, and again, Jim Wallman is a genius. I want to make it clear. We are going after a different audience. He's doing the hardcore role players. That's not something that we're you know, we wanted to expand the audience. So yeah. So anyways, so what he's you know, so like, for example, yeah, so there's the PR role in that game where the countries are responsible for the PR role, and they add in all the modifiers and such. We felt like I don't know these players, and if I was a player playing this game, I would say, oh yeah, we went up in income level, give us more credits. That's totally what happened. You know, like, I don't trust players to tell me how much money they should get a turn. We pulled that into control. And we changed how that works and all the mechanics and numbers and such. So it is Jim's Games. It's just every piece of it has been changed to modernize, to change the games, that kind of thing.
Are you working with Jim to adapt the 300-player version that he ran recently?
You and Jim should just want to kill me, because that is a conversation I literally had with him last week and the week before. We've got about a year of game design under our belt at this point. I am not ready to develop a 300-person game. I'm not ready for that. Jim is making a lot of changes to his 300-person version game, and I'm helping him a little bit with that. And he's taken some of the mechanics from our version and put it into the 300-person version game. No, I'm not. I can't. In a year or two, I can look and say, okay, maybe I know how to do this now. But I'm certainly not ready. But thanks a lot for wanting to kill me.
Pleasure. About your other games, do you have any sort of timelines for when they might be ready, and how many players are they for?
Similar player amounts as Watch the Skies, around 50. We're looking at, we want to hopefully have one, possibly two ready in the next 6 months. Where I'm to steal from Blizzard, which is a software company, like it's ready when it's ready. Like if after 4 months of development, we take a look and we decide, what, this game is not. Yeah, soon, exactly. If we say the game isn't ready, then it's not ready. We don't want half-assed games. We want them to be fully formed, because we don't want to see we see some reviews now for when someone runs a Watch the Skies, that's Jim's original game, and they're not doing it to just hardcore role players. We see people who are very excited about it, they love it, and then we see reviews also that are the games really didn't make sense, and the manuals didn't really make sense, or I didn't really understand how these things work together, and I wasn't really happy with it. So we don't want those. We want to make sure that the games are fully baked. So 6 months, hopefully. And as we have more developers, we'll develop more games and get them out there and such. But the other thing I'd say is you're not going to run out of interest for Watch the Skies, I'm guessing, for probably a year or two. It still takes a little bit of time to run them and to figure it out and all such, all of that.
We put a ton of money into it, and it kicks off when we get quite a good following and people are signing up. Is there any way of getting some area uniqueness to stop my next door neighbour running the same event? Not as good, with not such good quality pieces of paper, and once I've got the name out there, I've done all the advertising and stuff, and he's running a half-baked attempt just to bring some money in.
Well, so we're working with, when someone wants to run our version of the game, and eventually there will be one version of the game. I'm meeting with Jim in about, 2 weeks, 2 weeks from now, to consolidate into one version of the game. So they will contact us. Now, when, for example, I have a bunch of people who want to run the game in LA, I've put that, like, whenever someone says I want to run a game in LA, I put them together with the other group. I say, okay, there's actually already a group, you should go talk to them. And then they go talk together. We haven't had a problem yet where there's a territorial issue. If they're, that's a nice problem to have. Yeah, we're not there yet. I mean, generally people have been pretty great about it, and like when we when we see a new group, or when someone wants to do it and there's already a group there, because we sort of know that there's a group there, we put them together, and it's been all right. Yeah, and there's still, I mean, at the end of the day, they still need to print out, like, if it's not printed on as a nice paper, you know, I'm more concerned about them not understanding the rules and it just going to crap because they didn't run it correctly, and we're doing our best to help people, and we're going to have videos on how the game works and how the game plays that people can watch. We're going to do our best to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Awesome. Would you offer any help in publicizing the games? Maybe running this is the the UK version of.
Yeah, I mean we're trying to figure that, like, we have to figure that part out a little bit. We definitely, you know, for groups that we know. So the Chicago version of the Chicago game that's being run, and I'm going out there, but it's by someone that we know and that we trust and who's run our games before. It's a little tricky in terms of publicizing. One, because frankly, like, you know, I don't know too many people in your area. You know, like, the idea that, like, you know, I don't know that I could help so much with that. So yeah, our reach is sort of game designers all over the place, but we don't have for the most part. I mean, I don't know. We'd be happy to help, and we're happy to talk to you about that and do our best to help promote. But yeah, as I said, the first game that you run, there's going to be a lot of self-promotion. You're going to have to spend some time on that. There's definitely the first game is always the most difficult in terms of legwork and amount of time. After that, though, you no longer need to worry about that, because if you run a good game, and so far all I've seen is people who run not even that great game, it's enormous. It just goes very quickly. So yeah, Manfredi, I'm sorry if I keep mispronouncing your name, Manfredi, wrong. I definitely do want to talk to you, because I think that you know, I know you're saying that it's. Oh, I do. Oh, thank God. Thanks, man. All right, it makes you feel a little bit better. I definitely want to talk to you, because I think that you can. I think there are certainly models out there. I mean, again, I don't know your country very well, but there's definitely models out there where you can run these things, and there are similar things, as I said, like, you know, the theater or something like that. And what we notice is a lot of people, especially at first, they're just like, oh, we got to charge very little because we're worried that people won't, you know, we don't want to scare people off. And that's not what the problem is. It's just getting the word out. Once people know about it and understand, like, as soon as someone understands what Watch the Skies is, in my experience, they want to play it, and they don't care how much they charge. We've gotten offers for people to pay us double our ticket price if they can get guaranteed a seat. And again, every place is different, but I think we should talk, because I really do think that there's probably interest, and there's probably people who will pay money to do it. And you're giving them value. It's not like you're not, you know, it does take a lot of money to do this stuff. It's not like you're ripping them off. So yeah, we should talk about that. I don't want you to be discouraged, is basically what I'm saying, is because I think it can happen. I think it can work.
And what about new players? So people who has not so long background in role playing or board game playing, would you suggest to join a megagame, or better for the experienced player?
We've designed. So the great thing about Watch the Skies. And there's a reason why the Watch the Skies is the flagship megagame. The theme is so easy. How it works from the player's perspective is pretty simple. If you're the military advisor, if you're the science, it's very, very clear. It's very easy. As I said, my mom wants to play it. It's an accessible theme. It's really easy. You don't feel like, oh, I'm doing a LARP, I'm doing Dungeons and Dragons. How do I create a character? You're not playing a character. You're playing yourself. So it's super accessible. I've gotten people in the last couple of games who never really played a board game before, but were interested in it because they heard about it. So yeah, it has incredible appeal, and it's very, very easy. There's definitely some manuals and learning and stuff. So Manfredi's question is, are there different roles based on experience, like military for experience, research for new people, or equivalent? Not really. There's definitely the different roles. Another incredible thing about mega games is that people who are role players and people who are board gamers can play the same game, which is something that you don't normally see. So there are games that are more, I would say, that are more board gamey, which are the military game is a bit more board gamey. The science game is a bit more board gamey. I would say that those might be a little more accessible, but it's really not very. That's hard to say because people might just be like, oh, I just have to decide where my credits are going, and make negotiations with other countries and such, and talk to the news. That's really easy. So it's not really. It's really what people are comfortable with. Yeah, again, it's a pretty. We've tried to make it so that it's easy and fun and cheeky and everything else. So yeah, it's real. It's based into, as I said, it's based into people who are hardcore board gamers. They want to have like the board game. They want to move the machines are, and then the ones who are more like, I want to role play. I want to be the fart minister.
If we wanted to run your version of the game, do you provide a list of materials? You need to buy this many sources, this many interceptors. You need to print this many. Okay.
Yeah. We do all that. There's some special materials that we also recommend. So for example, for the one of the reasons why the cost is so high, we recommend you print the map on a vinyl banner. In the U.S., that costs a 5x8 banner costs about $90. So it just makes your life easier because you can roll it up. Like we've been printing it on these 11 inches by 17 inches. Sorry, pieces of paper, and I also should say 5 foot by 8 foot is $90. Sorry, metrics. The U.S. is terrible. If you print out a vinyl map, not only is it much more resistant, it's also really easy to set up. You just roll it out and then roll it back up and you store it somewhere. It's really simple. So we would definitely recommend doing that. And there's absolutely, we have, definitely part of it, we have a list of all the components. We tell you what you need to buy. If you want, there's certain stickers you need to buy that you can buy off of Amazon or some equivalents. They're very cheap. The cards, we provide you everything, and we will also, as I said, work with print-on-demand services. If you have one that's local, that's fairly cheap, and we'll try to get that for you so that you can have someone else deal with the cutting out stuff and laminating and all of those horrible things that my fingers are still blackened from. Yeah. So, are there other questions? God, not boring. Okay. So again, we're here for you. At the end of the day, we want these games. We want these games to work. We want these games to be incredible. If you have questions, I'm here. We're eventually going to make videos for people to watch so that they can see, oh, this is how this game works. First you put this thing, then you put this thing. So that will be coming as soon as we get a little bit more, as soon as I get a little bit more time. And yeah, any questions you have, anything that you want to ask, anything additional, if you want to talk about the licensing. There's a question. Yeah. Ricky. If you want to, talk about the license, that kind of stuff. If you feel like the licensing, again, we're trying to make the licensing agreement so that we can pay our artists and our server costs and such, and not burden you, which is why we came up with the model of, you don't pay your first game because you already got a lot of cost your first game. leave these poor people alone, and your second game you can charge a whole lot more. So we can talk about the licensing model if you feel that not okay with it, if whatever, that kind of thing. That's perfectly fine. Oh, sorry. Ricky asked, if you're interested in trying to run one, who would I contact? Where should I go? Contact at Megagame Society. We'd be happy to talk to you about it, Ricky, about running it, anything you need. Hopefully, I know you dropped in and out, so this should be available later, this recorded broadcast. I'll hopefully edit it so that I'm trying to be at least 20% less boring. We'll see, though. So yeah, no, it's okay. No, I saw you jumped in and out. So we can talk to you more about it. We can talk about licensing. We can talk about all that other stuff. Yeah, so contact at Megagame Society. I'll answer it, or one of the other execs will answer it. Execs, whatever. So we'll definitely try to help you out and explain how things go. If there are any other questions you guys have, definitely let me know. When you're ready, we're willing to work with you. Yeah, and then Freddie, let's you and I talk later, because again, I don't want you to be discouraged. And I think actually, Andrea, you're in Italy as well, right? Yes? No?
Who are you asking?
I was asking you. Are you in?
Oh, yeah. I'm from Italy. I'm from Turin, pretty far from where Manfredi is.
Oh, okay.
From
sorry.
Manfredi's place, but we can get in touch also offline.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So Manfredi, we should discuss, because I really do think. Oh, okay. Well, sorry. I definitely do think that there is you can charge, and this is something that happens, and there are equivalents, and people will pay. And they need to, because you have to pay for all this stuff, so it's hard. Okay, so if that's it, I will leave you guys all alone. Thank you for listening to me blather. Hopefully, I was helpful to some extent. And let me know what you'd like to do.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Noam.
Thank you so much.
Ciao.
Ciao. Bye.